I now call the January 14th, 2020 meeting of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Board of Education to order. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda, let it be known by a show of hands. All right, that is 9-0. Or all opposed? That's a 0. Okay, so 9-0. I will now call on Margaret Marshall, the school board member representing District 5, to introduce tonight's pledge leader.
Chase Shirley, if you would come on down. Chase Shirley is an exemplary 7th grade student at Quail Hollow Middle School. Chase exemplifies leadership qualities daily and works to live out the 7 habits of highly effective people while encouraging his classmates to do the same. Chase sets and makes goals and excels in speech and debate. Chase attended Myers Park Traditional Elementary School, where he began integrating principles from the leader in me. He hopes to one day get a business degree and use his leadership skills to become an entrepreneur. Chase, take it away.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. I am Chase Shirley, and I'm from Quail Hollow Middle School of Leadership. I'll be speaking to you all tonight about honesty. How to be an honest person. James E. Foss once said, "Honesty is more than not lying. It is truth-telling, truth-speaking, and truth-living, and truth-loving. Being an honest person is very important. Today, I will be speaking with you 3 traits of being an honest citizen. These traits are fairness, loyalty, and sincerity. As I go through middle school, I have realized that while it is said that honesty is the best policy, honesty is not always easy and often takes a lot of bravery. The first trait in regards of being honest is being fair. Fairness is an act of doing things that will treat all people equally and with respect. Fairness will ensure that you tell the truth and love and treat people the way you want to be treated. As my generation continues to get older, As my generation continues to get older, fairness becomes a priority for us. Being able to speak our truth like anyone else is the essence of American democracy. Second, honesty is being loyal. Loyalty is a strong feeling of support or allegiance. Loyalty is not supporting someone in their wrong, but rather showing them love, understanding, accountability, and honesty throughout their journey. Lastly, honesty is being sincere. Sincerity is hard to come by in the age of social media. It's very easy to hide behind a screen and lie about your emotions and your general life. Sincerity is being truthful and speaking honesty into existence, and saying what you mean and meaning what you say. In closing, honesty is vital in every relationship. The next time you think about honesty, think, is it sincere, is it loyal, and is it fair? Thank you for your time.
Excellent. And Chase is supported tonight, and I'd like for you all to stand when I call your names, please, by his mother, Angelia McGill, his father, William Shirley, his grandmother, Cynthia McGill, his brother, Malik Shirley, and sister-in-law, Chandra Barkley. We've also got some other relatives here, Diamond McGill, Wanda Dupree, and Jamil Funderbook. And he's also joined by some important people in his life, Miss Samantha Slater, who is his social studies teacher, Miss Renee McCauley, the literacy facilitator at Quail Hollow, Miss Rachel Neal, the principal at Quail Hollow, and Steve Esposito, learning community superintendent. Thank you all for your work with us.
And now I'm going to put on my Vance orange. And I'm going to turn to Dr. Ruby Jones, the board member representing District 3, for a very special recognition.
All righty. It's not before me.
Hang on.
It's not before me. It was given to the superintendent.
Well, I'm going to turn the superintendent for this special recognition.
It was given to the superintendent.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Along with Dr. Jones, I'm going to speak, but know that it is the both of us speaking in recognizing Vance High School this evening. Vance High School is the winner of the state football 4AA championship. By the way, Dr. Jones is the board member who represents the district where Vance is housed. Vance came so close last year, and this year the Cougars were victorious. It's the first 4AA championship for CMS since Mallard Creek won in 2015, and we are very proud of the Vance victory. As a former Cougar myself, I began my career in CMS as an English teacher at Vance High School. I'm especially proud of you all. Congratulations to the entire team, Coach Glenwood Fairby, and Athletic Director Carlos Richardson. And speaking of Vance, I would be remiss if I did not single out the principal of Vance High School for special recognition. Dr. Curtis Carroll will be retiring next month after 36 years in public education. 27 of those years have been spent here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and Dr. Carroll leaves a huge legacy. He was the leader of the district's achievement zone when it was formed. He has been principal at several schools, as well as a learning community superintendent. Whatever his job title says, Dr. Carroll brought his unique mix of energy and belief in student achievement to the task. He is a passionate and unique advocate for all kids. He cares deeply about students, and it shows. He was born to be an educator, and he has been an outstanding one. He has helped literally thousands of students along the way by challenging them and cajoling them into achieving more than they ever thought was possible. Dr. Carroll, we will miss you. I will personally miss you for your genuine friendship and mentorship. And we thank you for your amazing work in CMS. Now, I would like, I think the team has a presentation, a gift that it would like to present. So I'm going to turn it over to Coach Fairby.
On behalf of Vance Football, myself, my staff, and my players, we'd like to present you a state championship football from the game that's signed by every last player, coach, and everybody that was involved in our program. And we want to give this to you.
That's awesome. thank you. We will put that in a place of honor. And I think you all have a basketball game to get to, so we will understand if you have to,
And midterms to study for.
after the basketball game.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
All right. So tonight, we welcome a new student advisor to the Board of Education. Gabrielle, who goes by Gabe Schul, was elected to the position of student advisor by his fellow students in November of 2019. Gabe is a native of Charlotte and a junior at Ardrey-Kell High School. He's attended 3 other schools in CMS as well: Community House Middle, Oakhurst Elementary, and Hawkridge Elementary. Gabe is no stranger to civic meetings. He has been active in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Youth Council and student government and the speech and debate team. He also enjoys reading, and he's in the band and plays the jazz saxophone. So Gabe, welcome. Your very important job here is to provide the student perspective to the board. Our job is to make the best decisions that we can in order to serve kids, and your perspective is going to help us to do that. I know that you are also have a particular concern with making sure that we have equity across the district, and the Board of Education is committed to that too. So it's going to be a beautiful partnership over the next year. We are glad that you are here, and we look forward to working with you and learning from you. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much.
All right, we will now turn to our policy first readings. Dr. Jones, as chair of the policy committee, will lead us in the first readings of the following 2 policy matters. The first is A, proposed revisions to policy IHAM, Comprehensive Health Education Program, as well as B, proposed revisions to policy GBEC, Alcohol and Illegal Drug Use.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like to call it policy IHAM. Last week, a CMS student came to the regular meeting of the policy committee. Her name is Fabiola Cruz, and she's a senior at Myers Park. She has been to visit us before, and her insights and observations about the shortcomings of the way we teach sex education are persuasive and valid. She told us that the current sex education, which focuses on abstinence and not having sex until marriage, is so out of step with the times that students are tuning it out. I want to commend her individually and the other students who have in the past come to the policy committee to offer observations and insights. Those student voices are important for us to hear. I encourage any student who thinks a policy is wrong or that it could be better to reach out to us in the way Fabiola has. We want to hear from you, and we will listen to you. With that being said, members of the board, the item before us tonight is the first reading on changes to policy IHAM, Comprehensive Health Education Program. This policy was brought to the attention of the policy committee by one of our CMS students who was concerned about some of the language within the policy. It was first discussed at the October policy committee meeting, where the committee referred it to the School Health Advisory Council, commonly called SHAC, S-H-A-C acronym, to recommend changes. At the policy committee's meeting on January 9th, we reviewed the recommendations from SHAC, the School Health Advisory Council, and considered other factors, including state law. Based on those recommendations, those discussions, the committee voted 4-0 to recommend the revised policy that is before us tonight. With that, Madam Chair, I conclude the first reading of the proposed revisions to policy IHAM. All right, I'll proceed with, Madam Chair, policy GBEC, alcohol and illegal drug use. Members of the board, the item for us tonight is the first reading on changes to policy GBEC, alcohol and illegal drug use. The superintendent recommended changes to this policy and presented his requested changes before the policy committee at our January 9th meeting. At that meeting, the committee voted 3-1 to approve the recommended changes contingent upon the superintendent presenting an accompanying regulation prior to the passage of the revised policy by the full board. With that, Madam Chair, I conclude the first reading of the proposed revisions to policy GBEC. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. So we'll move on to public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight on the elimination of Exhibit BHEE, Protocol for Constituent Services. And seeing that there are no speakers, I will declare this hearing closed. Now, we're going to move on to request from the public. And for this, the rules are as follows. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes to address the board. Groups will have up to 10 minutes total to address the board. You may speak on any topic of your choice, except for either individual student matters or specific personnel matters. No personal attacks will be allowed. Neither profanity nor similarly inappropriate language may be used. And the board reserves the right to cut off any speaker who violates these rules. So with that, I call the following individuals to come down to the front of the microphone. We have microphones on either side, and please speak in the order in which I call you. So first we have 2 students from Park Road Montessori, Ali Abul Hassas and Gavin Beck. And then after the students, if you guys want to get ready, we have Judge Richard Bonner and Jeff, I hope I pronounced your name right, Pino. All right, Ali.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is my friend Ali Abu Hazan, and I am Gavin Beck. We are 3rd graders from Park Road Montessori. Thank you for allowing us to speak to you tonight.
In September, we were eating lunch on the picnic benches outside our classroom. Gavin was a buyer, and he was eating lunch from a styrofoam tray. This began an important conversation about how many trays were being thrown away at our school each day. We decided to put a stop to this and try to make a change in our school. We began researching plastic and styrofoam and why it was being thrown away so much. What could we do to change this problem?
After we finished our research, we developed a presentation. We presented it to many classrooms and encouraged them to sign our petition. Over 315 staff and students signed our petition, asking the cafeteria to reduce or to eliminate using styrofoam or plastic when serving lunches. After we presented it to our cafeteria manager, she encouraged us to go further with our petition. This is what has led us here tonight.
This is what we shared at our school.
About 1 million animals that live in the ocean die each year. 100,000 marine animals die each day by plastic. Almost 1 trillion plastic bags are used each year around the world.
That's almost 2 million every minute. About 1 billion plastic straws are used every day. 300 tons of plastic is produced each year. Most of the plastic thrown out in 2015 was packaging.
Plastic was invented by Leo Hendrik Baekeland in 1907. It was invented to replace scarce materials such as ivory and tortoise shells. Plastic contains chemicals that can cause cancer. The chemicals that cause cancer is called styrene.
Countries and cities around the world are banning plastic. Stores like IKEA are planning plastic bans that will go into effect in 2023. We suggest using reusable trays or biodegradable trays in the lunchroom. An alternative is we could use recyclable trays like Wake County schools.
Again, thank you for letting us speak with you this evening. We hope that this has encouraged our distinguished board to help us reduce or stop using styrofoam and plastic at our school during lunch. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
Good job, guys. Judge Bonner, that's a tough act to follow.
Their parents know that they can go on the CMS website and look at the video from today's meeting and snippet that and keep it as a copy in your media file if you want.
Madam Chairperson, members of the board, Superintendent Winston, I'm Richard Boner. I've lived here in Charlotte since 1975 when I came here out of a law school to begin the practice of law. For almost 28 years, I served our community as a district and superior court judge. My wife and I reside in the Old Province subdivision. We've lived there since 1978. We raised our 2 children to adulthood there. Both of our children attended Old Province Elementary School, Carmel Middle School, and graduated from Myers Park High School. Our grandson is currently attending Old Providence Elementary School. In my years here in Charlotte, I've watched this city grow from a big town to a large city with all the benefits and the problems associated with growth. Charlotte has a history of tearing down and replacing, and a history of obliterating open space with apartments, subdivisions, shopping centers, and pavement. Unfortunately, Charlotte lags behind other large cities in parkland. It currently ranks 96th out of the 100 largest cities in the United States in the amount of public parkland. Within the recent past, the county has announced plans to replace Marshall Park with commercial development. More recently, a proposal has been made to construct a large high school in the middle of the Old Province neighborhood on open land located behind the elementary school. That open land contains baseball fields upon which children have played for 50 years. It also contains one of the few undisturbed wooded areas in our area of Charlotte. Those woods are home to deer and other wildlife, and they're a place of solitude for people who wish to enjoy the peace and the quiet they find there. If you visited New York City, you no doubt have also visited Central Park, which is a green oasis in the middle of Manhattan. Imagine if the city of New York were to replace the trees, lawns, and pathways of Central Park with more tall buildings and streets. It seems inconceivable, doesn't it? I'm here tonight to ask you to form an agreement with the Mecklenburg County Commission, under which the county would buy the land behind Old Providence Elementary School and convert it to a public park, a park that could be enjoyed not only by the residents of my neighborhood, but also by other citizens of Mecklenburg County. We need more parks in Charlotte, not fewer. The funds that you received from the sale of the Old Providence property could be used to purchase property in the Ballantyne area for a much-needed new high school. Time is of the essence. As you are aware, real estate developers are aggressively building in the Ballantyne area. Soon there will be no more open space left in southern Mecklenburg County. I urge you to act now before it's too late. And I thank you for allowing me to address you this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Pino?
Thank you. I'm here to really echo Judge Boner's comments. My name is Jeff Pino, and I've been lucky enough to be a citizen of Charlotte and part of the old Providence residential neighborhood since about 30 years. I'm here tonight again to urge you to save Old Providence Park and sell that land to the county. My father was a product of a noble experiment called a Civilian Conservation Corps. During the Great Depression, he worked in northern Wisconsin, replanting forests and creating firelands. He developed a deep love for the outdoors, especially the forest and the love he passed on to me. I moved to Charlotte in '81, drawn by the weather, the work, and the wonderful Charlotte tree canopy in Old Providence. Mecklenburg County was full of forests and farmland open spaces then, and here I've had a chance to plant my own trees. When I've asked, what's the best time to plant a tree, I always say 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. In my 30 years in Charlotte, I've watched the forest and open land vanish in the name of economic growth with little regard for the benefit of those natural spaces. And that process, the process continues to accelerate today, but this ever-continuing denser development without parks and forests degrades the quality of life for every citizen, and the science supports this. Research in a relatively new field of eco-psychology points in one direction. Access to nature is not a just nice to have, but a must-have for physical health and cognitive development. And Richard has just told us about how we're doing. We rank in access to parks in our Charlotte neighborhoods. We're ranked 96, as he always mentioned. And so when is the best time to create a park, save a forest? The answer, of course, was 20 years ago. But the next best time is still today. We must act to set aside more of the remaining natural spaces, both for schools and for parks. The cost will be high, and some say that opportunity is already lost to us. Still, there is before us a chance to save a natural space already in hand called Old Providence Park, directly behind Old Providence School. And Charlotte has already set a precedent for setting land aside for elementary schools. Look at McKee Elementary, Polo Ridge, Elon Park, Berwick, and Hawk Ridge. Until last year, it was a 39-acre county park behind Old Providence Elementary. This park contains baseball fields, but additionally, there are 11 acres that are dear to my heart, 11 acres of natural forest. There are trails and outdoor classrooms. This park is the only available green space in a 1.5-mile radius and serves about 5,000 homes and their families. After 30 years as a county park, this land is now held by CMS. It's being considered for a proposed high school and some other type of development. Everybody publicly agrees it's not a great site and it should be preserved, but it's still serious risk for development. Tonight, I want to urge the board to make the decision to preserve Old Providence Park. It is important to the mental and physical health of our citizens. The simplest and best solution for our citizens is for CMS to sell this land to the county and save this park forever.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Mr.
your time and
Pino.
attention.
Thank you. Our next two speakers are Pamela Grundy and Luke Drago.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here with a late holiday present for all of you. This is the Shamrock Gardens, the Year in Shamrock Gardens, a calendar that celebrates 10 years of Shamrock Gardens Elementary's Butterfly Gardens, 10 years of helping students raise caterpillars, send monarchs off to Mexico, and learn about the marvels of nature right in outside their classrooms. Here primarily to thank the board and all the staff for the support that you have given to Shamrock Gardens over the years. It has meant so much. It was great to walk in here, see many of the people who've helped. Curtis Carroll, who celebrated tonight, was our over us for a while. We did a lot to help the school. Tamisha Williams, former assistant principal, is here now. It's just nice to see everybody. This calendar emphasizes that truly building up a challenge school and the students who attend it requires us all to look beyond the narrow obsession with test scores that continues to plague American education, and to find ways to nurture and sustain genuine forms of education that engage body and spirit as well as mind. We hope that all of you find inspiration in your 12 months of caterpillars, butterflies, and eager students. Thank you so much. I'll drop the stack off here. There's one for everyone on the dais, staff included. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Drago.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening. My name is Luke Drago, and I'm a senior at Argico High School. Superintendent Winston, members of the board, I'd like to begin with a question. What's the difference between a CMS student and a panic button? A CMS student works in their classrooms. After the Butler shooting, members of the board rolled out a new security plan, including the implementation of panic buttons in as many schools as possible. Last year, a company called Synergix installed the system in 25 schools. A few days ago, the Charlotte Observer came to Superintendent Winston with questions about the panic buttons. Shortly after, he held a press conference revealing the buttons didn't work, were plagued by issues. What's more, the Observer story revealed that district administrators knew this information for months. I would want to applaud this board's courage for setting a 30-day deadline to get the panic buttons working, but it's too bad that once again, our officials have been caught hiding public information. Members of the board, I've got to ask, why is the Charlotte Observer the only institution in this city that can get you to tell the truth? Unfortunately, the C and CMS time and time again continues to stand for cover-up. Many on this board will point to the previous superintendent as a source of secrecy, but I'd spare us the excuses. It's been months since he left, and yet this revelation came out just days ago. Your lack of transparency is part of a bigger problem than one superintendent. And I'm tired of asking this board to improve school security, and I'm tired of asking it to tell the truth. A child died on October 29th, 2018. That should have been all we needed to get this done right. It's been 442 days since the Butler shooting, and the core element of the circle of safety still doesn't function. We were sitting ducks then, and we're sitting ducks now. By the grace of God, you've been given a chance to correct your mistake before a student suffered. And on behalf of every student, parent, and teacher in this district, I'm begging you to do something to secure our schools. And this time, do it transparently and do it right. I think Commissioner Cotham got it right when she said, and I'll quote her, "People accept a problem, but they don't accept being lied to. The truth will set you free." Members of the board, it's time to be set free. Fix the panic buttons, investigate the process that led to this mess, increase the board's transparency and accountability to the public, and please make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Drago. So this ends our request from the public. Is there a motion that the board approve the consent items?
So moved. Second.
All right, before we move to a vote, does any board member wish to pull any part of this item for individual consideration? All right. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by a show of hands. Any opposed? So that's 9-0, Madam Clerk. Our consent agenda is approved. And Superintendent, would you like to speak about any personnel appointments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to recognize two appointments made after the board meeting in December. Vince Golden has been named principal of Butler High School, filling the vacancy created when John LeGrand moved to the Central 2 Learning Community as executive director. Mr. Golden has been in CMS since 2006, serving as assistant principal at 4 elementary schools: Lake Wiley, Nathaniel Alexander, Mallard Creek, and Briarwood Academy. He has been principal at Lebanon Road and Northridge Middle Schools. He has shown consistent and steady leadership as assistant principal, and I know he will bring his expertise to Butler. Congratulations, Mr. Golden. If you, well, you go right ahead.
I would first like to say thank you to Superintendent Ernest Winston and to the entire Board of Education for this great opportunity that you have afforded me to join the David W. Butler High School. I definitely want to thank you for the opportunity to work with the great students that I found out were great in just 1 week. The great parents, staff, and community at Butler High School. I also take this time to say thank you to Mr. John Wall, Learning Community Superintendent, and Ms. Condra Ratley, who also, Dr. Condra Ratley, I should say, who also worked along with me at the great Northridge Middle School. And definitely to my new superintendent, Learning Community Superintendent, Dr. Tangela Williams. Once again, thank you to each and every one of you, and let's go, Bulldog Nation.
Thank you, Vincent. The second appointee is Dr. Kimberly Schroeder. She will serve as the new Executive Director for the Southwest Learning Community. Dr. Schroeder most recently worked as a Grant Director for Union County Public Schools. She has previously served as the Assistant Principal and Principal of Cuthbertson High School. We're happy to welcome her home. She taught English for 8 years at Butler High School before moving to Union County. Welcome back to Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, Dr. Schroeder.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much. I am incredibly honored and humbled to be serving as the Executive Director for the Southwest Learning Community. And I would just like to thank Dr. Steve Esposito, Superintendent Winston, and the school board for the incredible honor. I also would like to say thank you to my husband, Jeff, our 4-year-old Austin, and our 2-year-old Aiden, who are home. 2 of them are home with the flu, so they cannot be here with us tonight. But I want to say thank you to them for their support as well. So thank you again. I look forward to serving this district and our learning community.
Thank you, Dr. Schroeder. Turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
All right. Well, we have 5 action items tonight. The first is to recommend approval of charter for ad hoc committee for compliance. Is there a motion to approve the charter as presented for the compliance committee and ad hoc committee of the board?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All right. So, colleagues, I would like to speak first on this item. In accordance with policy BDE, the item before us is the creation of the charter for an ad hoc committee for compliance. If approved, this charter will create a 3-person committee that will assist the full board in the hiring of our newly created position of a Chief Compliance and Transparency Officer. That position was created by the board in November of last year when we passed policy BDH. This ad hoc committee will do 4 main things. First, create the job parameters. Second, initiate the job search. Third, complete the initial review process. And fourth, recommend to the full board the finalist for consideration. I support the creation of this charter and encourage my colleagues to do so as well. And with that, do any other board members wish to discuss or debate the item? All right, well then I will call for the vote. All in favor of the motion as stated by Ms. Lennon, let it be known by a show of hands, by Ms. Cheek, sorry.
We'll get to it in a year or two.
I've only been married
It's been 2 years.
15 days.
Let it be known by a show of hands. Any opposed? So Madam Clerk, that motion passed 9-0. So next, we're going to recommend approval of a charter for an ad hoc committee for governance. Is there a motion to approve the charter as presented for the governance committee and ad hoc committee of the board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Colleagues, again, I would like to speak to this item. In accordance with board policy BDE, the item before us is the creation of the charter for an ad hoc committee for governance. The purpose of this ad hoc committee is to create a process by which the board will follow when we perform evaluations for ourselves and for our 3 direct reports. This ad hoc committee will do 4 main things. First, recommend to board leadership a process and a schedule for board self-evaluations. Second, recommend to board leadership any refinements for evaluations for direct reports to the board. Third, recommend to board leadership a schedule for evaluating direct reports to the board. And fourth, recommend to board leadership any other processes that will make the board a more effective and efficient governing body. I support the creation of this charter and encourage my colleagues to do so as well. Any discussion? If not, we will move on to the vote. All in favor of the motion, let it be known by a show of hands. And any opposed? That's another 9-0, passed by 9-0. All righty. So now we will move to item C, recommend approval of changes to policy ADAA. I turn to Board Vice Chair Thelma Byers-Bailey to introduce this item and make the motion for its adoption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the Equity Committee began to schedule their meetings, it was discovered that we needed clarity in the language regarding the initial terms for the inaugural members. Therefore, I move to approve this technical correction to the policy ADAA regarding the term length for the inaugural members of the Community Equity Committee.
All right, thank you. Hearing the motion, do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Ms. Sawyer. Do we have any wish to debate or discuss this? All right, so all in favor of the motion to recommend changes to policy ADAA, let it be known by a show of hands. Any opposed? We have another 9-0, Madam Clerk. Finally, we have the next item before us is to recommend approval of modifications to the June 4th, 2019 motion, which established the 2020-2021 attendance areas for Polo Ridge, Hawk Ridge, J.M. Robinson, and Community House schools. Before we take action on this, I turn to the superintendent to introduce this item and to make his recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask Akeisha Craven-Howell, our Associate Superintendent for Student Assignment and School Choice, to come forward. But before I do so, I'd just like to share some background briefly. The board is considering Action Item D, a change to Action Item D, in order to keep all students in the Rayburn neighborhood assigned to the same elementary and middle school in response to community feedback, including that of several constituents who spoke during the December school board meeting. And as part of establishing that boundary for the new Ray Farms K-8 school, the board had previously approved an assignment change in June of 2019, effective with the 2020-21 school year, which inadvertently split the Rayburn community at Ray Road. I wanted to provide that context, and I'm going to ask Ms. Craven-Howell to provide some additional details to further explain my recommendation.
Thank you, Superintendent Winston. I'm just waiting for the presentation.
Hopefully, there, no? There we go.
Thank you. As the superintendent shared, as part of a June 4th, 2019 board decision, which established the boundary for Ray Farms K-8 school, the board approved a section that I will read to you because I think the specifics are important. Assigned to Polo Ridge with continuation to J.M. Robinson, the portion of Hawk Ridge Elementary attendance area, which is east of Ray Road, between Bryant Farms Road and Ardrey Kell Road, including east of the lot line behind Elrose Place. One of the unintended effects of that part of the motion which passed is that the Rayburn community, which sits both east and west of Ray Road, was assigned to 2 elementary schools and 2 middle schools as a result. Visually, on the left there, you see the Polo Ridge Elementary attendance area. There is a purple line which indicates the school's current attendance area. The shaded blue indicates the school's attendance area for the fall 20 school year based on what the board approved in June. That kind of crudely drawn red polygon there is the outline of the Rayburn neighborhood, and that purple line that bisects it is Ray Road. So you can see that the community sits both east and west of Ray Road. Over to the right, I've pulled out the Rayburn community, and again, you can see that kind of right down the middle there is Ray Road. I will say that our current mapping software does not provide the outlines of neighborhoods or HOAs, and we rely heavily on the community engagement process for that feedback. In terms of student impact, that entire area that is described by the part of the motion that I read to you contains 113 elementary students and 55 middle school students. The Rayburn community is a subset of that number, and it's almost equally divided, 24 elementary and 10 middle school students east of Ray Road, and 24 elementary and 14 middle school students west of Ray Road. And you can see in those final 2 columns of that table, based on the board's June 2019 decision, those students' current assignment this year and what their assignment would be for next year based on what had already been approved. As the superintendent shared in response to community feedback, the recommendation is to amend that portion of the June 2019 board decision to add language that says, and the portion of Rayburn community west of Ray Road. The effect of that would be that the entire Rayburn community will be assigned to Polo Ridge Elementary with continuation to J.M. Robinson, beginning with the fall 2020-21 school year. This does not affect the high school assignment, which was and continues to be Ardrey-Kell High School. If there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them.
Ms. Cheek.
So the one thing I would maybe try to figure out for the future, I have a real estate license too. I know that makes a lot of sense that I'm a nurse, but I also have a broker's license. And one of the things that brokers know how to do is search HOA covenants, CCRs, covenants and restrictions. So there may be some way to leverage local real estate or someone else to help us, maybe before we go public with a map, to just take a look and make sure that we haven't done anything, because there are CCRs on, loaded up somewhere out there in MLS most likely, but somewhere else there's a website for covenants and restrictive things for HOAs, and they could just double check that we're not splitting any neighborhoods. I think that realtors know that better than anybody, because they do try to make sure that homeowners and home buyers are buying a property in an HOA, what the HOA dues are.
It's helpful.
So that might be a good way to leverage that. And I know that realtors would love to work with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Craven-Howell. So I now turn to Sean Strain, the board member representing District 6, to make a motion.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation as presented. This modification, as mentioned, would assign to Polo Ridge with continuation to J.M. Robinson Middle School, the portion of the current Hawk Ridge Elementary attendance area, which is east of Ray Road between Bryant Farms Road and Ardrey-Kell Road, including east of the lot line behind Elrose Place, and the portion of the Rayburn community, which is west of Ray Road.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? All righty. Yes, Ms.
I would just like to point out that our student assignment rubric or policy says that we have many factors that that the student assignment policy looks at. 4 of them are part of a rubric that they use, and the rest are goals that we would like to reach. And not dividing a community when we're doing our student assignment is one of our goals, and we certainly don't want to violate that. But it is not one of the primary rubric factors that we look at when we initially look at student assignment.
And I'll just say, you know, it is good to have that local knowledge and that community feedback, because there's sometimes where you just, you know, it's an easy mistake to think that Ray Road, you know, is an intersection of a neighborhood. So I'm glad that the neighborhood was able to point that out and show us that you are indeed an HOA, one singular neighborhood, and that we were able to find a solution that keeps you together, but also at the same time helps us to relieve overcrowding. So we're always trying to hit multiple goals at once, as many goals as we can, and I want to thank you and your staff for finding this solution. So with that, oh, yes, Mr. Strain.
Just a quick comment. The goals and guiding principles are not where HOAs are defined. HOAs are defined in our definition of a homeschool boundary. And so it's actually it's the atomic building block of our student assignment plan. And I appreciate certainly Ms. Cheek's recommendation in terms of making sure that that's recognized and that we seek every possible avenue to understand what those atomic building blocks are and build from there. Thanks.
All right. So I will call for the vote. All in favor of Mr. Strain's motion, let it be known by a show of hands. And any opposed? So, Madam Clerk, we have another unanimous vote. We will now move on to recommending approval of the name for the new Ray Farm School. And again, I turn to Sean Strain, the board member representing District 6, to introduce this item and to make the motion for its adoption.
Thank you again. Madam Chair, I move to approve the selection of Ray Farm STEAM Academy as the name of the new Ray Farm School as recommended by the School Name Advisory Committee.
Do we have a second? Second. All right. Any discussion? All right, I will move for a vote. All in favor, let it be known by a show of hands. And any opposed? All right, that is every single vote unanimous. Madam Clerk. And Mr. Superintendent, are there any VIPs that you would like to recognize at this time?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to briefly just take a moment as we prepare to open the new Ray Farms STEAM Academy. I'd like to recognize Principal Brooke Huff, who's actually in the audience, who actually started the process and appointed a school name advisory committee. Along with her, I believe, is Brandy Marks, a member of that committee, and I'd like to recognize both of you for your hard work and the entire committee in the process. Thank you.
All right. So moving right along, we shall look at the report on capital project ordinances for October and November of 2019. I turn to the superintendent.
As presented, Madam Chair.
All right. And now, Mr. Superintendent, do you have anything else to report?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I will be brief. I'd like to add my support to Dr. Jones' remarks earlier on the importance of student input in our governance and decision-making. Just in the last few weeks, a student named Nathan Asher spoke here about the inappropriate and dated language in one of our regulations, JJAA-R. Based on Nathan's input and after reviewing the regulation myself, I have decided that modifications were needed. Therefore, I will now execute this modified regulation by signing it. And I wanted to thank Nathan. I hope your willingness to step forward encourages other students to do the same. Thank you very much, Nathan. I will now sign the regulation, and I would also like to add that coming your way will be pens that I'm using to actually sign this new document.
That's so cool. Very cool. All right. Anything else from you?
No, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So at this time, I will recognize any board member who wishes to make a report. Ms. Cheek?
Hey, thank you.
I think I got it right this
You
time.
got the right last name. I've only had two since I've been on the board, but it has been a decade, so there you go. It really has, 09. So I just wanted to update you, we've kind of had a little bit of the Rhonda and Jennifer Roadshow, and we're going to continue it at 7:30 in the morning at the Peninsula Club for the Cornelius Newsmakers Breakfast. We're going to talk a little bit about CMS. We were at the Davidson Rotary last week, the day that school started back, and we got some great discussion there and a great support. The Davidson Rotary had engaged with our Davidson K-8 and the entire school, walked from the school up to the town square of Davidson and met with Rotary members that explained the charity giving tree project that was in the town square. So it was the first ever all-school field trip up to the town square. Very exciting, new thing to happen. And the other thing I will mention to the Old Providence folks, I lived in Old Providence as a high school student. Completely understand. I wish the judge was still here to hear me say that, but I lived there as a high school student and understand, and I know that I'm not the only one that has great feelings for that pocket park that is there, that has been on our property for a great number of years, and I know that we're going to do the right thing. And that's about it. There's just so much going on right now.
Dr. Jones?
Yes, mine is just a point of being inquisitive. I think you've heard me at more than one board meeting speak about how we define high expectations and to bring more concreteness around it. But add on to that, STEAM is a popular part of naming schools. In STEAM, if I'm correct, educators out there, stands for all of the elements that every school should have and must execute in high expectations of teaching students. So it's just one of fascination that is such a, it's just popular to put that in the title of the school. But I want all schools that don't have STEAM associated with it to know that STEAM is the curriculum in those schools as well. Just a practical observation I wanted to put in the atmosphere, so to speak.
Right.
Is that okay, Dr. Hayes? All right.
Mr. Schul?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to all the board and its members and people and the staff who have extended an especially warm welcome to me in getting settled here. And I thought it was only fitting that I should highlight the amazing work done by the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Youth Council and Generation Nation, who is able to make this position as a student advisor possible here, and it's of the utmost importance, as Ms. Byers and Mr. Winston were speaking so kindly of. So some of the things we've done just recently is we've met twice with Mr. Winston to talk specifically about CMS communications and some feedback from social media. We've also advised city officials and county officials. In recent weeks, we've shared our concerns about budget priorities and our feedback for 2021 planning. And we're planning to host student town halls across various high schools where students are able to be more accessible in sharing their input and feedback with the community based off of their own experience. So thank you to all of you again, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Ms. Sawyer?
Good evening. I'd like to extend an invitation, especially to folks in East Charlotte, to join in a conversation with Superintendent Ernest Winston, hosted by Charlotte East, next Thursday, a week from Thursday, January 23rd, beginning with a reception at 6 and a meeting beginning at 6:30 at Charlotte East Language Academy, 6108 Willora Lake Road. This is an open invitation to the community who are interested in, and concerned about East Side schools to share their ideas and have a chance to get to know Mr. Winston. So please come join us. Thank you. Week from Thursday.
Ms. Marshall?
So we all just got the benefit of hearing from some incredible students from Park Road Montessori who have seen a problem in their community and are doing something about it. And on a very organic level, so to speak. And I have experienced that all week. And I just want to highlight several of those things that I have seen in person. And then I want to, we obviously saw a demonstration of that just now. I got to see on television that many of you did, the wonderful article or the piece on McClintock Middle, who've come up with an amazing ability to help a student carry around an oxygen tank on her walker. And they've designed that. And one of the students that was involved in the design was the student that passed away, unfortunately, in front of McClintock that week. So we've just got incredible kids that do amazing things at all levels. I also got to visit South Meck last week and saw their incredible honors leadership class. It encompasses just an enormous amount of students at South Meck, and they had all read Brian Stevenson's book that's now been made into the movie, and have done all sorts of projects that they presented to their classmates on issues that they felt from the book were needed to be talked about in their community. It was all very peer-to-peer oriented, and the students that presented and the students that observed these projects were so engaged, and I was so excited to see their enthusiasm and their authenticity in presenting those things. And then finally, on Saturday, I was able to attend a meeting out in the Southwest in the Olympic feeder zone, where a number of folks involved with a nonprofit have worked diligently on elevating the cause of sexual trafficking. Thank you for, I need some help every now and then on my wording, to elevate that and how we're educating our staff, how we're educating our students in our community to prevent this horrible thing. And we have students there that have formed the second largest club at Olympic that is tasked with this educational model. So, to the superintendent's point of when our students talk, we listen, but our students are leading us already in so many ways. And I'm so thrilled to see that. I'm so thrilled that our staff is putting that wind beneath their wings. I think that's important. I want us to all remember that as we go forward this year and listen to how our students are leading us. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Byers-Bailey.
Thank you. You've often heard me bragging about the CTE programs that we have in my high schools, and I am so thrilled with all of them. But I'd like to share something else that is happening. Friday, January 31st at 9 a.m., we will be having a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Goodwill Construction Skills Training Center. It's right across the street from Philip O'Berry. As much as of the skill set that we share with our students in our schools, we have people who are not in our schools who would benefit from these skills as well. Now, this center is going to serve our students as well as members of the community who are, want more training so that they can get productive jobs in the construction industry. And that's an industry that we all well know the age group is, the workers that are working there doing the work now are aging out. And those skills are needed if we plan to grow this city the way it's supposed to grow, the way we want it to grow. So this ceremony will be January 31st, starting at 7:30 to 9. And it's an open house. And just come by and see what our students and what our community is learning to do to benefit all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Strain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the board for this evening's correction of the student assignment compliance issue that was brought to our attention. I also want to say that I look forward to the further discussion, certainly with staff, with fellow board members, and our Board of County Commissioners around our capital investment plan, particularly, but certainly not limited to, our needs and the commitments that we have made to the south part of the county. And this one's a bit outside of our jurisdiction, but I'll take a moment of personal privilege nonetheless to recognize the service and sacrifice of North Carolina's 82nd Airborne Troopers. For the first time in 3 decades, the immediate response force was mobilized in the United States Army within 48 hours and deployed overseas at the request of the President. That hasn't been done, as I say, in 3 decades. But the 82nd has largely served in that role as a global response force or immediate response force for decades and decades. Incidentally, that was the 1st Brigade. The 3rd Brigade lost 2 troopers in Afghanistan this week. Those 2 troopers came from a battalion that I am honored to serve with, obviously not in the service, but I do a lot of work with them. And it's hit particularly close to home as it came from a platoon that my daughter has very good friends in. So, again, thank you very much for the service and sacrifice of the 82nd Airborne.
All right. Ms. De La Hara, Ms. Shipp, do you have anything? You don't have to.
I wasn't, but if you don't mind, since you mentioned that, Miss Lenora Shipp and I just returned from a 2-day training in Raleigh, and we happened to be seated yesterday beside a gentleman who had recently been elected to the school board in Cumberland County, I believe it is, and he spoke about the impact on the school system when you had 3,000 troops deployed. And so in keeping in line with that, since you brought that up, it just made me recall that. So keep those folks, the whole community, in your thoughts.
All right. Nobody else? I have a quick report. As we move into 2020, I'm very encouraged by how our elected leaders in Mecklenburg County are working together. I am seeing a lot of signs already this year of us actively meeting, talking, and exploring ways that we can collaborate on problem solving, again, together. Last week, we had an encouraging meeting with Huntersville leadership, so I wanted to personally thank Mayor Annarella, Mayor Pro Tem Bales, Commissioner Hines, and the Town Manager Roberts for making the drive down to Charlotte. Just this afternoon, Vice Chair Thelma Byers-Bailey and Superintendent Winston and I had a great conversation with the County Commission Chair Dunlap, Vice Chair Powell, and County Manager Diorio to plan for what could turn out, and I believe will turn out to be a very productive joint meeting next week between the county and the school board. Ms. Cheek, you've already heard about Ms. Cheek and Ms. De La Hara, how busy they've been in the northern part of the county. Tomorrow morning, they'll be up in Cornelius again, and then later in the day, Margaret Marshall and I are meeting with another county commissioner, Mark Jarrell, to put our heads together on some workforce development ideas where there are things that the county can be doing and things that the school board that can be doing, and when we work together, we can do more. Later in the month, the co-chairs of the City of Charlotte's Intergovernmental Committee are meeting with the chair of our intergovernmental committee to explore some ways that we might join forces for the greater good. And so I just want our constituents to know that all of this is happening. Because we hear so much about division in Raleigh and in Washington and all over the world, but here locally we have elected officials who are trying really hard to work together. And ultimately this sets us up better to serve you, our taxpayers, our voters, and ultimately to serve your children, which is what's most important, sets us up better to serve your children more effectively. And so this gives me hope and courage, and I hope that knowing this also gives you a small bit of encouragement as well. And with that, we have a little bit more closed session business to take care of. So the chair will now entertain a motion that the Board of Education go into closed session to consult with our attorney about matters covered by the attorney-client privilege. This motion would be made pursuant to Section 143318A3 of the North Carolina General Statutes. Is there such a motion and second?
So moved. Second.
All right, so we will move back into closed.